Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us for our virtual event, Colonial Treats for Your Holiday Feast. My name is Rachel Taylor, and I'm a programming librarian right here at the Sprint Memorial Library. Tonight, we are very excited to welcome as our guest speaker, Sarah Platt, the founder of the Madison-based food sustainability nonprofit, So Grow Savor. Through her presentation this evening, Sarah is going to show you how to prepare 2 delicious colonial-inspired desserts with locally sourced ingredients, while teaching you about the history of each dish. I do ask that everyone please remain muted, except for at certain intervals when Sarah will indicate that she's ready for questions. And then if you could please remute yourselves, that would be wonderful. You are also more than welcome to enter questions into the group chat. So thank you so much to Sarah and her team for being with us tonight, all the way from Yukon Stores, I think, and, as well as to Bishop's Orchard for the generous donation of their apples. And without further ado, here is Colonial Treats for Your Holiday Feast. Thank you. Go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you so much all for signing on tonight. I'm really excited to share some recipes that are really dear to me and get to know you a little bit better towards the end. So Grow Savor, I started 2 years ago, funded by a Yukon Idea Grant. And this program really came out of my desire to reconnect with my grandmother, who had passed away. She was an avid cook, and to bridge generational gaps that I felt were missing in Madison through food, through cooking, through art. And in the 2 years that I had the program going, we've expanded, we've collaborated with numerous farms and chefs, and now actually we were recently awarded a grant to publish a cookbook that combines recipes submitted by residents like yourself into a community cookbook that will be shared at a fundraiser in Madison and disseminated in local libraries and other venues. So if you're interested, if you're inspired by this demo and you'd like to submit a recipe of your own, please consider it and feel free to ask me questions at the end about it. So tonight, actually, I approached Rachel about this event a couple months ago, and I really wanted to do a colonial recipe event because I had oh, okay. So I'm getting a notice just before I begin that you're seeing the back of my head. We have 2 cameras going. If you select in the panel, if you select, you scroll through the participant faces, you might be able to see my front facing camera as well. This camera on the side is just so that so it's that you can see smaller objects of me doing cutting or other things like that. So I had a wonderful experience as a child at Deacon John Graves' house. I remember distinctly taking a bottle of cream and shaking it as hard as I possibly could to make butter. And these experiences, brought me back, and I really wanted to kind of pay homage to that experience and bring us together through it. So I'm going to be doing 2 recipes tonight, and some of you may have picked up the ingredients for them. Some of you may not have yet. The first recipe is a maple custard, and the second one is a stuffed apple recipe. Now, the first recipe I was intrigued by because maple is such a distinct New England ingredient, and it's been around forever in the culinary scene of New England. But I think not many people know that it was a part of Native American traditions as well. Actually, the early Native Americans would take the sap and collect it in a kind of a wooden, like a dugout wooden bowl of sorts, and in the winter they would let it freeze, and through cycles of freezing that would separate the sugar from the water and then they would have their distilled sugar. And that evolved a bit. They started using hot rocks to effectively take out the water. And then when colonists started making syrup as well, it became more of what it is today, which is, we have the vats, big, large vats where that 98% water gets boiled off and we're left with our maple syrup. So to begin this recipe, I have 2.5 cups of whole milk, and I'm going to scald the whole milk over medium-high heat. And for any of you who have made a custard before, you know that it's important to get your milk hot enough, but not too hot that you cook your eggs. So while that's heating up, we're going to take 4 eggs, and we're not going to separate them. We're going to just take the whole eggs and whisk them gently so that you're not making too many air bubbles. But you want to whisk them well so that the yolk is well incorporated. I'm going to keep an eye on the milk.
And it makes it easier if you do this in the large container that you're going to do the whole mix in. That makes life easier. And we're trying to do it without lots of bubbles. Where's the other one that's not lots of bubbles?
This one we definitely don't want bubbles, but we will strain at the end. So if you end up getting
as little air as possible. The other one, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's this one. This is the whole egg.
Yeah, you can even do a little bit more vigorously than that.
Yeah, but I was super non-bubble when I made it, and look, it came out good. So. How are you doing? Just don't scald your milk.
Okay. Oh my God.
So here we are. See, while I'm doing this, you're doing that. If you're alone, it's a lot safer to maybe do the eggs, set them aside, and then do the milk. That old kettle boiling problem.
No, it's just give it a little feel. So it's coming up to temperature. I'm gonna make this one. So in the colonial kitchen, it obviously didn't look too much like this. And I don't know, I'm sure many of you who have visited recreated colonial kitchens, but often the hearth kitchen was really just on the floor, bricks on the bottom, and you would put the bricks that would become very hot would be your source of heat. They would really be like your stove top. As well as, they would use charcoal and wood to burn. Now this is just about there. When you start, you can start to see the milk start to almost look like it's steaming.
You don't want it to boil.
Yeah.
You made enough cream of wheat.
Yeah, right. Or oatmeal. Anybody left their oatmeal on the stove too long?
Some people put oatmeal with water for that.
So next, we have to temper the eggs so that I'm not just pouring the whole hot milk into the eggs.
You just go slowly.
Oh, and so I'm going to speak a little bit louder. I know that there's a lot of background noise.
Okay, turn off the stove or no?
Better turn the stove off.
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
Add a little bit in there. And whisk vigorously at this point.
Keep going.
I'm just gonna give a little pause. And then add in the rest of your milk.
Slowly. Remember slowly. It's supposed to be measured slowness as you stir it in.
Now, you should start to feel the mixture thicken.
No, not yet. No.
It actually, yeah, it does.
No, I did it last night. Bad information.
Okay.
True.
And then we're going to add in 3/4 cup of maple syrup.
And you gotta get more stirry when you do this, so it's actually mixes. And you can smell it.
Yeah,
Starts
this
to
is,
smell good.
that heat brings out the maple flavor.
It's done. And somebody in the kitchen gets to lick that. How much vanilla?
Then we're gonna add one teaspoon of vanilla. Now, you
That's
don't
a
have
half.
to add the vanilla.
That's a half.
But I say that with an eggy, like a custard, if you don't add the vanilla, the egginess can be really accentuated, and you might have a little bit, of a stronger maple flavor. But if you want to dampen it down a bit with the vanilla, it's a really nice addition. You can also add vanilla seeds as well.
But vanilla didn't grow here.
Yeah, these recipes are adapted to the modern palate, if you will.
Is this the one that gets the 4 spices?
No, this is not. Yeah. So
You're
you
right.
can see it's very frothy.
So now you gotta get rid of the froth.
But the better incorporated it is, the softer your custard is going to be.
Can you just talk into the phone? That makes a lot. Yeah, just always, I'll point the camera.
So now you're going to strain the mixture. And this is going to make it extra creamy and smooth. Remove any of the eggy drops that didn't get quite combined.
And then you have to get that off.
And then
You dump it. You gotta bring it back.
you're going to take your
You're-
milk, you're going to take your foam, and you're just going to skim off any remaining foam.
you're just gonna make this way. And I think you can waste a lot if you do this too aggressively, because you can fill in labeling anyway.
And there you have it. So that's your custard batter. It's really simple, and I mean, the maple
Why
flavor,
don't we move
the
this
maple
over?
flavor just shines in this.
Make it so you can label this.
So I'm just gonna evenly ladle into six ramekins. And you can see I'm doing this into a sheet pan because this water is going to make sure that the eggs get evenly cooked. Because what can happen if you don't do this is you'll have, a bottom or in the top that's very, very cooked and a center that's gooey. And this recipe, you can half it and you can double it. And a lot of you who have made custards in the past have probably done it with a bit more egg, working with a larger batch, but it scales well. Just about. Okay, just about there. You'll have a little bit extra left if you want to put in. You have an extra ramekin, or sometimes at the end, some people will drizzle that slightly cooked custard as a kind of a nice topping.
This side.
Okay. And so this is going to go in a 350-degree oven. No, it's actually going in the far oven.
Oh, it's like a confection.
I'm going to put it on the floor rack.
That's the trickiest part, because you can spill it all.
So I'm going to bake that for 40 minutes, and I'm going to give it an eye. And if I need an extra moment, I'll maybe keep it in there another 10 minutes, depending. Yes. So you can start it warm. Some people do. It really isn't going to affect it too much. It depends on your preference, what you find works for your oven. But I've had success with starting it cold. Okay, so the next recipe, we are going to make a Williamsburg-inspired recipe. This is really a celebration of apples. I love apples. I think they're an underappreciated fruit, and they have such a incredible story in terms of what they did for colonists, and how they really got to America and took off and became the American fruit, if you will. They actually originated in Kazakhstan, in the hillsides of Kazakhstan, between the border of Kazakhstan and China. And through the trading route, through the Silk Road, they were taken up and brought to Europe. In Europe, they didn't really take off because the farming there didn't really allow for it, and the structure of farming. But when they got to America, there was great space, open space for them to work with, and hillsides just became speckled with apples. And the interesting thing about apples is that a variety of apple is simply a clone of a clone of a clone. And one apple, you might want to plant a seed from an empire apple, but that's not going to be an empire apple when you grow it up. And I just think that's really fascinating that these apple varieties that exist are purely clones. And it also speaks, how special some of these older apples are, these older varieties that have been around for a long time, because they, without the propagation and the cloning, it wouldn't be there. So to start with this recipe,
What oven temperature?
the oven temperature is 350.
Okay.
Yeah. So to start with this recipe,
Actually, it's 45,
I'm going to separate the whites from the
Yolk.
yolk. And
Wait a
the
minute.
whites are going to be a meringue. Oops. So although these recipes are both custards, they work a little differently. For one, your apple is basically your water bath. And two, you have this wonderful crispy meringue that you're covering your apple in. Now, I always make sure to let my eggs come to room temperature, because if they're too cold, your meringue, your egg white, it won't fluff up, it won't stay, you won't get those stiff peaks. All right. So I'm going to ask my father here. It's his birthday. In case you're wondering who's this mysterious man, it's my dad. And he is going to whip the egg whites until they form stiff peaks.
I think it's going to overlap this whole.
Meanwhile, you'll whip, and we might want to go on mute. You follow. So now I'm going to add 1/4 cup of sugar to the egg and whisk it well. All right, we spared you of the meringue whipping, but here you have your nice whipped egg white that will become the covering eventually of your stuffed apples. So I'm going to heat again over medium heat, this time not whole milk, but heavy cream. And this is 1 cup of heavy cream. So this custard is a little bit more creamy, I mean, given that it's heavy cream, but it balances well with the tanginess of the apple. And it cooks a little bit differently, a little bit faster than your maple custard. All right, so while that's going, I'm going to add my spices. So we have ginger, cinnamon, nutmeg, and some mace combined in here, all 1/4 teaspoon. Some of you may know this, but actually nutmeg, and you can just tell from when you smell them, but nutmeg and mace are actually come from the same plant. They're the mace is from the outside of the nutmeg nut, and then the nutmeg is from the interior nut. I'm gonna add that to the egg. Keeping an eye on the cream.
What I did is I saved the top and did it all.
This is, you can see it's getting that steaminess, so it's just scalded. And I'm gonna ask for a hand on this one. So as I add the egg, Dad, you're gonna whisk.
Just dump it in there.
Okay.
Oh, here, okay. When I did this, I did it all into the cooking pot because it saves the dish and you don't need to have it separate. And we end up with losing some of this. It's just easier to do it with just if you're, it's less. I don't want to lose any of the good stuff. That's the good stuff right there. That's the good stuff. Look at all that good stuff. It's like Bob Ross good stuff. Paint. There we go.
Thank you. So I'm just whisking again to well combine. And I'm actually going to bring this back onto the heat. So it's going to thicken it just a bit.
How long do you need to do this?
And so while this is going, I'm going to pose it to you. If any of you want to unmute yourselves and share any colonial recipes you like to cook, or any questions you have.
I'll let you know when they come. Does the type of apple matter?
So you can really choose any type. I recommend Empire. I found that it works really well. They're wonderfully tender by the end of it. And I wouldn't recommend a really watery apple. Like a Honeycrisp, it might be a little too watery, and so it might prevent your custard from cooking as well. The harder the apple, the longer it's going to take to cook. But the softer the apple, it might not hold up. So this is just thick enough. And now we're going to ladle it into our apples. Now, yes, and he's going to show you how to prepare your apples. So you're going to peel the apple.
You get a shop and stop peeler for a couple bucks. They're amazing. Looks like easier. Or if you're old school, you know, you do it this way. And if you're old school, you get to have the fun of trying to make the longest thing that keeps going. But I'm not doing very well tonight at it. That old thing. I just like doing that. And then you have to take the core out. Now, there are special coring things, but none of those things are necessary. You just need a sharp knife and facility with it so that you don't hurt yourself. Yeah. Trying to hold it vertical, and then I'm going down, around and around, turning the apple into the knife. It's easier that way, obviously. And then we can start.
Now you can also use a spoon to dig it out.
Yeah. Now
Slowly,
we want
you
to
know.
get the seeds out.
Yep. So I would recommend using a spoon, or you know.
Enough. I don't know the spoon was.
It is right there.
There, we're perfect. Now I've left the nut on the bottom because you don't want it all to drain out. When you eat them, you just have that little thing. So there we go. There's an apple. There we go.
Now, put a ladle of custard into the apples. The apples, you can put them in a pie dish.
Wait, no,
you
you
can
skipped something. Sugar coated.
Oh yes, he caught me. He caught me. So make sure that your apples are well dried. You don't want any extra moisture on the outside. And so I'll just have this one dry. And what we're going to do next is we're going to coat these in our meringue. And don't worry about it being perfect. But try to get as much on there as you can.
And then you do the sugar. You can use a basting brush. My wife found that. So put your fingers in the hole.
Yeah.
So like this. Put fingers in the hole like this.
Yep.
And then you can hold the whole apple. Okay. So my wife's like the basting brush. She kind of slathered it on there and made it all constant. But you know, that's all just a style points thing. And hey, it looks kind of neat when it's all got
Like a snowball.
big bunch of.
Yeah, it is like a
foam,
snowball.
too. Are we ready to sugar it?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then sugaring, here's the sugaring. I put it over some because you'll waste all your sugar, but if you put it over something, you can go back and reuse the sugar. As the sugar drops by you, you can go back and reuse the sugar. Waste not, want not, old New England tradition. Okay, there's one.
All right, so we got one done.
Okay.
Now the sugar gives it this wonderful kind of brown coloring on the outside when you bake it, and it also adds that crunch.
Is
Okay.
the meringue for insulation like a baked Alaska?
I suppose it is doing some insulation, but I think it's more for texture.
It really instead of the apple.
Yeah. Okay.
Sugar time.
Ready for sugaring? Put some more of it right there. Just
Right on the bottom.
slob it on. Okay, perfect.
Whoops.
See, all that sugar, I can reuse it. By the fourth apple, I use it.
Okay, I'm going to stay here.
So you can, if you have 2 apples, you can do this recipe with 2 apples. You will have a little extra egg left over. What I recommend doing is keeping it on the side and then just kind of ladling it over your end product for like a little bit of a, I don't know, it's almost like you're pouring cream over a cookie. Like it adds a little moisture and creaminess. Fine.
Okay.
Ready for sugar?
Sarah, bring yours over with sugar. See, I'm running low on sugar, but not to worry. Put it right over there. Okay. Now, oops. Watch. Hold on to that. Get my sugar back. Ready?
Perfect.
Turn it over.
Okay. And voila. We have our 4 sugar bombs. Now I'm going to scoop the custard into the center.
Bring it closer.
You can really fill them up. Fill them up. Oops. Add any meringue if you want to touch them up.
Does the custard need to be saved?
You can save the custard, yeah, and I would recommend at the end, eating a little bit of it along with your baked apple to add some moisture back. But the apples are very moist and tender by the end. Okay, so now they're going to go in at 325. You can do them at 350, but I find that the 325 is a little bit better. And depending on your apple, they'll cook for about 45 to 60 minutes. If you have a really hard apple, maybe like 70 minutes.
How long?
But there you go. We'll just check on our maple custards as well. They look like they're
I think the custards are 45 minutes.
just about coming along. They'll start to brown.
I'm gonna put on top of that.
Now you want to keep an eye on these. If they do start to brown to this meringue, you might want to put some tinfoil over them. But I found it works fine. So there you go. So about an hour in the oven, and you have your final products. You have your delicious
You're supposed to fake it.
stuffed.
Supposed to fake it and pull it out of the oven. Didn't do the
I
trick.
didn't pull it out of the oven.
You
I'm
didn't
not
pull it
gonna,
out
I'm not
of the
gonna burn.
Yeah, you
burn
didn't pull it out of
these
the
in
oven.
But you get the point. We have these lovely stuffed apples with the creamy custard in the center, the soft, moist, tender apple, and then the crunchy meringue on the outside with that crystallized sugar. I like to decorate them with a little whipped cream on top. You can put some nutmeg. I put some cranberries on the side. And then our maple custards, you can absolutely add some
You can eat it. Have a
cinnamon
bite.
on the top.
Have a bite.
You can see these have been chilled.
You can serve them warm too. See,
I
came out
recommend
right.
them warm, but you can see
I
a
made that last night. and it
beautiful
worked.
soft. You
Take off your mask and eat it.
Mm,
Were these clean?
that's delicious. Oh my god. Very very soft, very light, mapley flavor. There you have it. Do any of you have any questions?
This is also low battery.
Wow. I
We
can't
might have
believe
to we might have to shift.
It actually worked. It's the first time I ever made custard. It's better than Horn and Hard Art's cup custard.
It's not my first time.
Um,
I lived in France for some time and we were always making custards.
When I was little in Philadelphia, it was Horn and Hard Art's cup custard. That was my favorite custard. Wow. That's good.
So I'll turn it back to our audience.
yeah,
Do you have any? Would anybody like to share? Any recipes, any ideas that you have for Thanksgiving holiday? Well, if not, we'll give a taste to our stuffed apples.
Look at that. Custard. Yummy. There it is. The portable videography battery.
Yeah, so the phone got tired, so we switched over to our laptop.
That's good.
Yeah, I would say this stuffed apple recipe is really something else. It's
simple.
it's so simple and it's just delicious.
Really
So
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was fantastic. Those look really delicious. I'm just
Yes.
gonna stop recording at this point so people can ask their questions. And thank you so much for doing a great job.
thank you.
Thank you.